So this is Inside Star Citizen Alpha 4.0 conflict resolution. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have already watched this. I have too, but I wanted to react to this one because there's a few things in it that are interesting. And can't really see it because of the chat, but the shirt that he's wearing, like this was probably filmed a few weeks ago, but the shirt that old mate's wearing, the person that shirt's based on died a few weeks ago.
What's the word I'm thinking of? Murderous. It's not. It's like it's not like, you don't want to say immersive, but it's visceral is probably a bit too much of a big word. It's like, I'm thinking engaging. I suppose.
Tell us what you really think of the back.
I suppose engaging is the much more like engaging.
You hear this? He doesn't think you know the word visceral, people.
Well, it's a lot of syllables for a bloke from Coventry.
Succulent.
We have a two-syllable cat where I'm from.
Sword. There's a sword right there. When it pops up again,
As the pirate star system is lawless, this means that combat can break out anywhere. Social spaces can turn into combat spaces in the blink of an eye.
The main experience we're trying to build is something that feels a bit more like wild.
No, it wasn't a laser sword. Give me a sec. Chat starts. That shirt there, Hazard. The that should be gone now. This is Democracy Manifest. There's a YouTube video on it. Bring the chat back. Let's keep going.
And not the typical thing that you've seen in Stanton. So the themes are a bit more chaotic than you'd expect. So for example, if you're shopping and then someone decides to take a firefight with you because they think your armor's cool and they want it, you can jump over that kiosk, sit behind that cover and return fire. So
that's not how fucking combat works in this game though. If you have the advantage, you're gonna win the fight before it even gets to jump over the counter. Unfortunately, this just reinforces the point that the devs don't understand the way that the game plays right now, because time to kill is so low still. Like even when they increase the time to kill, it's still low enough that you could shoot somebody in the back and by the time they get to turn around, they're dead. And in this particular scenario here that he's going, oh yeah, if you know in the social space you can have fights, it's like, okay, that's cool. So if somebody's wearing armor that you like, they can start shooting at you and you have to jump over the counter to re-engage. It's like, what are you fucking on about, mate? They're gonna be dead. They're gonna try and jump over the counter and they're just gonna fall over dead. They won't complete the vault animation. It will go from vault animation to bloody ragdoll dead. It's points like these that doesn't help CIG sell to the rest of the community. Apparently I had to use that term, in the dick. Yeah, getting shot in the dick while you're glued to the terminal. Yeah, like you're gonna be sitting there trying to buy some fucking Cruise Lux and the next minute bloody you're getting shot in the bloody back. You're like, what the fuck is shooting me? And by the time you register what the fuck is going on, you're gonna turn around and you're gonna be like, oh shit, I gotta jump over this dead. They will die halfway through, but the server will have them complete the vault, then die. No, it will have them complete the vault, they'll be able to turn around and start shooting back, and then next thing, they'll finish the fight, they'll see old mate die, and as they walk out the door, they'll die, and then old mate will be running over to their body to pick up their stuff. That's how it'll work. Yeah, this doesn't help, though, sell to the rest of the community that they know what they're talking about and that they think through the scenarios. When you do game development, you think of scenarios that you're going to put your players through, right? And you want to make sure that the scenarios that you're putting them through, that you take into account a lot of the potential or the most obvious things that are going to happen. So in this particular scenario, and as I described it, somebody's interacting with a terminal. Okay, we can have a fight in the social space though. There's no like hard armistice zone to prevent the pulling out of weapons, right? Okay, that's okay. But what's going to stop that player from pulling out their weapon? Nothing. Okay. What's going to discourage that player from doing that? What's going to make that player sit there and go, is the juice worth the squeeze? I really want that armor set, but if I pull my weapon out, I'm going to have several NPCs that are standing guard pointing their guns at me. If I go to pull the trigger or I don't pull my weapon away, I'm going to get shot down. Agents, this is why players want to do PvE things. This video angered and made them turn off pyro. To be honest, like if that's what's going to turn off pyro, then that's probably a good thing that they're picking up on it now. Like that's my take on it. Yes, it sounds frustrating that you going into these spaces and trying to buy something may end up, you being in a gunfight, right? But at the same time, if CIG introduces the correct systems to mitigate players acting on those dark voices in their head that say shoot them in the face and take their shit, it makes it a bit more bearable. But that's the point that I'm getting to, is like what they've described here and what they don't tell us later or at all during this video creates this impression that CIG just doesn't think through their decisions. That's a problem, and I don't think they're doing it on purpose. I just don't think they considering that backers are like hanging off of everything that they say. We're all sitting there and fucking like being drip fed content from CIG, all the new shit that we want. We're hanging off every word that they're saying, right? When they say something and players, and they don't give the full picture, players start filling in the gaps. And that's a problem. Like, we're partially responsible for that. We should be managing our expectations. But I can tell you now, it's like CIG has been doing this long enough that they should know that they also are responsible for managing player expectations too. That if they're going to make a statement like Olmay just made, they follow up with like, but there's consequences for doing that beyond, like ending up in a firefight against that other player. Like, I've already watched this Wombat, so I think I've got a different take to you though when it comes to a lot of this. But we'll keep going through.
You're basically turning this shopping mall, which you were at previously, into a combat zone.
These spaces were built modularly with various different overlays that had to stitch together, but also make sure that it accounted for a fair combat fight and easy navigation for both vehicles and any other light elements that you want to be able to bring to these places. As for the trade posts, because of their ever-shifting inventory of things they could sell, could buy, things being on display, this changes the layout of the trade post itself.
Taking everyday objects in the trading post, like weapon terminals, something that you would purchase, would then, as soon as a fight is initiated, that becomes cover. You would be using these things to help yourself to not get shot by the enemy, essentially.
So you could be ducking behind cover behind a ship component that you want to purchase for your ship later, but first you've got to take care of this rival gang attacking you. Then afterwards you can decide, hey, I need to grab a multi-tool for this other salvage mission I need to go to. So after the firefight is finished, you go to the counter, pick up your multi-tool with a salvage component, pay for it, chip's done, and off you head out.
Like, I get what they say when they're talking about there. It's like, the capacity for combat is everywhere. That's okay, Wombat. There's nothing wrong with that. What if the shopkeeper died? Well, fuck. Just grab it yourself then. You don't have to pay, right? Or put your own shopkeeper in place and you now become the store owner. Tier 0 bloody player stores. Done. Confirmed, guys. We worked it out. Cracked the code. Like, my perspective on Pyro is that I'm okay being in an environment where there's a constant threat. I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is that it just turns into a free-for-all regardless of where I go. That's what I'm not okay with. Like, yes, there's a potential threat around me. I need to keep my eyes peeled, make sure I'm rolling with my boys, rolling deep, make sure we're all strapped up, making sure that I'm prepared and to go into the environment that I'm going into. But I don't want to be in this position where, like, I get hamstrung when I go into shops and things like that in Pyro. No, they're not. They're not forgetting the trade runners from Pyro to Stanton. You're just going to have to take extra measures. Like, that's the thing about this is, like, Pyro as a system, like, people say that Stanton is like Space Rust or Space GTA. No, Pyro is fucking Space Rust. Pyro is Space GTA. And if you're going into that environment, you need to make sure that you're going prepared. You have to be ready for that shit. There's no real safe zones, like, everywhere. There'll be people who will want to do it. Guarantee you. There will be people that will want to do it. They'll see the challenge in it and they'll be like, yep, that's what I want to do. That's where I want to be. I like that risk. There's nothing wrong with not wanting to be in that sort of environment. But, like, CIG is laying out, like, Pyro is dangerous. This is the potential things that you could end up encountering. This is a situation that you could be in. The threat's only based in Pyro at Ruined Station. No, they've got, they actually talk about it in this video. I think Xenothreat are control Pyro 4, 5, and 6. I think that's the way it goes. We'll find out later. Yeah, I think the law's going to get expanded when we get Pyro, just so that they can fill the area with stuff with Xenothreat and conflict and factions and things like that. But I'm not as concerned, right, when it comes to the level of potential combat that you could experience in Pyro. And where people see problems, I see opportunities. It's like, oh, the traders don't want to go to Pyro because they say it's too dangerous. All right, well then we have an opportunity to find people who are willing to do it if we mitigate the risk for them. If we can help mitigate that risk, they'll be more likely to do it, which gives us the ability to start a monopoly. So that's what I'm talking about, like rolling deep with your boys, everybody's strapped. You go into a bloody shop like this, you don't go in alone. Everybody's going in there, everybody's armed to the teeth. The cargo hauler who's there to bloody sell stuff or pick stuff up, it's like they go to the terminal, they're surrounded by our guys. We've got guys in Overwatch flying overhead, looking around, keeping an eye out. But then again, like, CIG hasn't articulated as well, like whether or not faction reputation matters. So we may be able to go into a place like that's controlled by headhunters, for example, and we've got really good rep with them. So if anybody even attempts to attack us, the NPCs take our side and kick the shit out of whoever attacked us. There's additional things that CIG have talked about in the past that are related to this that could be taken into account here. But as I've talked about earlier on, once again, CIG is just not doing their due diligence when it comes to providing explanations on their design intent and what that ends up being. What that ends up being is like we fill in the gaps, and like we either sit there and go, start asking all these other questions, and they're sitting there going, no, like this stuff that we talked about here and there, like you're supposed to remember that and take it all into account. It's like, what if they're a new person? What if this is the first ISC that they're watching and they're being told this stuff? And they just found out that in Pyro, every single shop that they go to could be a fight, right? Due diligence, CIG. You owe it to your community.
Taking what we've learned and these setups from Squadron 42 to Pyro, for example, NPCs having specific archetypes and having more specific classes, using things like defend areas and keeping NPCs in specific areas. Pyro, we're taking that to the next level where we're having more specific areas used for defenses and things like that, and making areas stay in NPCs. We're also using something called schedule areas, which basically enforces NPCs to stay within a certain vicinity in combat. For 4.0 with server meshing, we expect higher server frame rates, so the idea is that you'll get a much more engaging AI experience. Let's talk about some of those classes. We have what we call our techie, which typically features light armor and SMGs, and they have more aggressive traits, so they're focused on getting close to you and flushing you out. Similar with our CQC class, which typically has shotguns, and obviously they have the much higher aggression version. We've seen us talk about traits at CitizenCon, and this is putting that work in the persistent universe and allowing us to create more dynamic situations. We're doing other...
It looks like they gave whoever V was being used, looks like they gave him a bit more health and resilience than what we experience now, because that dude would have died if it was the current PU. The amount of bullets that they took.
Other things as well, for example, we're making NPCs hold up in rooms for shotguns and things like that. So when you have to eliminate a specific target and you're going into a room, those guys are specifically holding up there, and you're kind of having a tug of war of them in close quarters environments versus them just kind of walking around the area. With our Juggernaut enemy, you'll have seen that that's the incredibly highly healthed LMG enemy, which ignores all shooting restrictions, can focus on pushing the player and shooting them out, and basically being that slow-moving target that walks towards you. Similar, including things like Copions into battle. One of the factions has pet Copions.
You know what I hope they have? Like, I'm glad that they've done this, and just like, you go to an outpost and they've just got a fucking horde of these things coming at you. I think this is cool that they've done this, but I hope that they've got other creatures that they haven't said anything about yet. Like that they've got other creatures planned to be used in the same sort of capacity. Like Pyro Crab. It would be fucking funny if like headhunters had managed to capture a pyro crab that they kept, and as a last ditch effort of like stopping you from succeeding, they released the crab. Gonna kidnap other people's pets. Yes. Oh man, I still want to like capture one of these dogs and unleash it onto a station and see what happens.
Guns fight alongside them, and that is fantastic because it gives you a different silhouette when you're fighting these factions. You have to shoot a lot lower, you have to be a lot more conscious because they're a lot quicker than a human being, and just these nice little new additions to combat. We're integrating more things in terms of having people who are more aggressive, having different factions, having different accuracy profiles, and making the factions in Pyro feeling a bit more versatile and different to when you fight each other. These encounters are a lot more crafted and bespoke.
That's how you feed your pets. You know, you just kill other players and then just feed them the corpse. They went with the space dog. I think they did that on purpose though. I think they did that on purpose because they concepted a creature that the Vandal would use, like a Vandal dog type creature. So if they can use the same like animation models between the two, kind of saves some time. To be honest, I'm surprised they went with Space Dog and not like a Space Cat. Well, sometimes you gotta work with what you got. Like, I'm surprised that like they still haven't shown the Oni crab at all. You guys remember the Oni crab from the original Hurston bloody reveal? Orville reveal? The original Lorville that was like a tenth of the size of the current one. Little flying jellyfish things. I'm surprised that they didn't bring those in. Because what was it, what the fuck are those things? What are the birds called now? The birds that are using boids? I can't remember what it's called. Shows how much attention I pay to that shit. Anyway, the tech that they use though for those birds would also be utilized for the bony crabs. So I'm surprised that they didn't do that. Or maybe they are going to do that and they're just not going to tell us. That's really what I want COG to do with these creatures. I just want them to put shit in there and just not tell us. And the next thing that you hear is like, oh shit, I just got attacked by this thing. I was in a cave and this huge thing attacked me and I don't know what the fuck it is. And everybody's like, what? We've never seen this before. Developers need to deny all knowledge. Cannot confirm it at all. Call them out as liars. Just gaslight the entire community that it doesn't exist. It would be data mined instantly. That's fine. I'd give it a different name. I'd give it some really weird name. I try and pretend that it's something that shouldn't be there, like through the naming convention. And then when players are bringing it up, like, oh, this thing, we just had an encounter with it. Gaslight the community. No, that's fake. You guys are making it up. Just gaslight the entire community, even with all the videos and everybody confirming that they saw it. Just developers, hard stance, just nah, you guys are making it up. You're all colluding with each other. You don't know what you're on about. Name it the Hornet Mark III. No, name it the Saber Mark II. Oh god. Alright, keep this going.
Pyro is a system of conflict, and in there's many factions vying over control. When you arrive at Pyro, one of the first things you want to do is enlist from the two primary factions. The Headhunters have more tiered structured armor, which you can acquire. The more higher tiered the armor is, the more tanky and resistant those enemies are.
As a Headhunter, you might be hovering around the Sunset Mesa, trying to think of how you're going to get close by. You would land your ships under the cover of darkness. You're taking your ground vehicle to the outpost. You're then getting out, trying to sneak past the outer perimeter, and eventually navigating your way down to either the gas tanks or to the main landing pit itself, and finding the exact critical point that would break the entire operation at the scrapyard.
Citizens of Prosperity have much higher and deadly accuracy. They also have more civil weaponry versus criminal weaponry as well, so you'll see things more like bearings and so on and so forth, versus other more lawless factions which typically have things like Castak arms.
If you're aligned with the Citizens for Prosperity, you might be given a mission to go to Rustville and actually head down into the canyons and try to steal some of their scrap from their derelict ships in the base of the canyons. Because of Pyro 1's
Is this mission description or faction description? It's both. They're talking about the conflict that you have between the two different factions, and they're describing missions that you can do with each faction against the other. One of the things that I don't like though is what they're doing now. Hype up this, that they have to tell us what's going on with it. Like, I'm not a big fan of that. This information should be in the game. If you've got to tell your players outside the game environment what's going on, you haven't done a good job of setting up your game information to translate to them. Like, I know that they need to talk about something in this ISC, but I'm quite confident that they could have spent less time telling us about missions that we'd do for the factions and more about like how the factions actually interact with each other.
Unique terrain where Rustville is located, you will need to get into your ground vehicle again, navigate through all the twisting canyons and ravines, and use your multi-tool to steal as much scrap as possible to end up sabotaging the unlimited supply of scrap that the Headhunters at Rustville have got.
So regardless if you side with Headhunters or Citizens of Prosperity, you will both be able to fight the Xenothreat.
These hate everybody. They are operating out of Pyro 2, 3, and Pyro 6.
The Xenothreat is more what you'd think of as a PMC in terms of how you fight them and how they behave. They're a lot more cautious, they're a lot more careful, they won't try rush out of cover, they play a lot more defensively, and we can use our trait system to inform how they make combat decisions. So where you'd expect someone like the Headhunters to be a bit more run at you, push you out, the Xenothreat characters will be a lot more cautious and stationary and prefer to stay in cover and take long shots.
Oh look, it's Jared. He's in the game. I don't know about you guys, but I thought the facial expressions of the Xenothreat when they were firing just looked way out of place. Like they're just there, blank face, just staring, like, man. And I still don't, like, I'm still surprised that they've turned around and said that nobody can side with Xenothreat, even though players are going to want to. I guarantee there's going to be orgs made around it.
And they'll have a much higher accuracy profile, but they'll shoot for much shorter durations, so they conserve their ammo a lot more.
A place we're going to fight Xenothreat is at the Last Ditch settlement on Pyro 2. Last Ditch is another large, lawless settlement.
We have a
town close by it, and then different mining operations between the village and the mining tower.
And it's kind of a callback to the history of the system, where there was once these mega corporations in Pyro that would do these large-scale mining operations.
It's a vital part in the Pyro ecosystem for these outlaw gangs to control. So we can also see here that there is fortifications, but they're mainly around the village in which these gangs operate.
But interestingly, it's almost built on 3 levels. There's like a main habitation area on top of this bluff, and then just down from that is the refinery area, and then right at the base of the super large mega mining structure is a small sort of extraction area in an old kind of quarry.
I don't like what they're doing here. Like, they're telling us about these locations, you know, showing us these locations. Like, I would prefer to be discovering these myself, going there myself, or watching other people go there for the first time, as opposed to now where people have a heads up of what's supposed to be there.
It would make for some very interesting fights, especially as you move between those sort of 3 sub-locations within the larger location.
I hope that the player will get a sense of trying to stop Xenothreat with their evil deeds.
Shadowfall is another Xenothreat outpost. It's quite a large Xenothreat outpost that lives in the shadow of this mountain on Pyro 3.
Is that why they call it Shadowfall?
And kind of just sits on the shore of this lake.
This location hits different. It's a location just like the outlaw locations, but we can feel that things have been turned up. It is not only is it chaos, but it is now a structured chaos.
There's fire and there's these spiked barricades that make up the place around it.
Within the homestead location, we have a lot of elevated positions that the player will look to. We'll see that there is a lot of scaffolding build up, and it feels like a fortified position.
So in 3.23, we added sniper NPCs to the distribution centers. In 4.0, we're going further on that and adding specific watch nests and things like that to keep these snipers in. So you'll have to be careful and keep an eye on for these outposts and these high elevation where snipers could essentially hit you from.
Another case for the scope glint. Did you imagine that getting domed by fucking AI that you didn't know was there? Yeah, Aiden, this is actually, you just touched on a fucking nerve right there. This is something that I fucking hate about how CIG keeps selling criminals and pirates and fucking like any sort of lawless faction. Like, they're just fucking uncouth, uncivilized savages that don't know how to keep their environment clean. Guarantee you that on Mongrel Squad ships, I'm going to be fucking kicking people's asses about leaving rubbish laying around and graffiti on walls and stuff like that. Alright? We are pirates, not fucking pigs. We will live and work on bloody clean ships. I haven't bathed in a week. I shower every day. At least twice. Yeah, like, this outpost, like, why is there no hardened, like, points? Like, if this is an outpost here, why haven't they set up, like, a perimeter wall? Why haven't they got perimeter wire set up further out? Like, PMCs are just not, PMC is not code for bloody Renner fucking military, and they just are fucking slobs. But yeah. You touched on a nerve there, Aiden. I don't like how CIG keeps making criminals out to be these fucking uncivilized, bloody unclean savages.
How we're validating combat is ensuring that the players can have a lot more stealthy approach, have a lot more overview of what their targets are doing and where they're going.
So you could use elevation to plan things out, such things as a comms tower, such things as cliff edges. You can basically survey over the trade post or the outpost itself. You could look at key things. Does it have automated weapon systems there? Does it have primary, secondary, and tertiary pathing to allow the player in?
It's all about defensive structures, about obstructing the player in order to get to its objective, with a lot of anti-air turrets littered around the location.
You are going to need to use your aerial support.
No anti-ship installations as well. Wombat, are you sure you watched this video? These actual missile turrets are also on some of the new derelict outposts in Stanton. Actually came across one on aerial.
To take out these defensive measures so that you can even get people close to the location. Eventually, you can pull in your ground vehicles, drop off an elite squad. You can stealth through the scrapyard, you can stealth.
Wait, what if I don't have access to an elite squad? Am I fucked? What if I've only got an average squad? What if I've only got Mongrel Squad?
Via the nearby lake, come through the derelict outpost section, finally clearing out Xenothreat once and for all.
Until they come back.
From another outpost.
It's definitely a place that will just feel very hostile to the player, and you feel like this is a location that has a purpose within the universe, and that it's important for these outlaw gangs to protect what they have going right here.
In 4.0, you can expect a lot more crafted, engaging combat experiences with new archetypes, enemies In 4.0,
Oh, it's a mule. Okay. I thought it was a different vehicle.
you can expect a lot more crafted, engaging combat experiences, with new archetypes, enemies using new weapons, fighting animals alongside humans, and all sorts of absolute crazy that you expect from Pyro.
2-0, NPC crew. You guys have seen the Reddit post. What I'm talking about.
All right, Bosch.
Well, what more can I add? We always knew there'd be a lot of combat in Pyro, but with the addition of more AI archetypes from Squadron and the anticipated performance improvements generated by server meshing, we're hoping to deliver an experience that's more dangerous, engaging, and heck, I'm not from Coventry, so I can say it, visceral for our players. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. Thanks for letting us share the people and process of game development with you, and we'll see you all here next week for a look at characters and creatures in 4.0.
Like, it was kind of informative, that episode, but yeah, like, it was a marketing episode, 100%. And this, I believe, is a reason why 324 hasn't got as many players in it. Do we actually expect 4.0 to have better performance? Yes. The issues that we'll end up encountering in 4.0 will probably be different to what we experience in Stanton. So, performance should be better when everything's working the way that it's supposed to. But when it breaks, it's going to break catastrophically. It's going to be fucked. So the answer is, will things be fucked in 4.0? Yes. Will performance be better? Sometimes. Because, like, the way I've explained this in the past is that we currently have Stanton being run by a server, right? So all the server resources are focused on the entirety of a system. So if you've got 25 players at each of the different planets and they're all spreading out to the stations and all that, the server has to maintain keeping track of all those entities. So 100 entities on a single server across all those different spaces, across like all those different missions. And that's why you see such poor performance, because the server has to track so much shit, right? If you took the capabilities of that server and you put it into one location, even just put it all into Crusader, and you didn't add any more to Crusader, you just left Crusader as it was, but you took the server's resources and just focused it on there, your AI would be working, missions would be flawless, you'd be getting 30 frames per second on server side. The only time that you'd be impacted by any sort of poor performance is broken code, but if you experience it there, you'd experience it everywhere. It'd be the same problem that you would experience in a server environment where you're covering all of Stanton as well. It'd just be more pronounced in Stanton. I know a lot of people are sitting there and they're skeptical because 4.0 is a major patch iteration, new tech and things like that. I get that. Systematically though, with the way that server machine's supposed to work, server resources being dedicated to smaller areas, we should see a performance increase. That's what it comes down to. The issues that we'll encounter though are going to be moving between the different servers that we're on, all the shards. So will performance be better? Sometimes it'll be problems that we'll experience where players are going to like just end up not understanding a single thing that's happening to them. Yeah, like I'll be surprised if it's as brutal as 318. To be honest, like the sort of performance problems that we'll see when we're in server meshed environments is we'll be chasing someone and we'll go across a server shard to another one and we lose them because they ended up on a different shard to us. Like that's the problem that I see. Performance wise though, it shouldn't be that bad. Unless, players in one shard are just doing some ridiculous things in a single location. Like everybody got whole seas, 100 people got whole seas at a port full of cargo and they all self-destructed at the same time, and they just kept doing that, and they just kept flying ships into the bloody cargo boxes and that, and forcing physics calculations to be done for thousands upon thousands of entities in a single location. That could cause server performance issues. That would do it regardless of the server mesh environment. Dynamic server meshing may be able to fix it, but yeah, I'm kind of going off topic here. Yeah, that video was 100% marketing, conflict resolution. That video turned a lot of players off as well. Why? Like, I was under no illusions of what Pyro was going to be. If anything, it just confirms a lot of the things that I thought was going to be what Pyro was going to be like. Like, Pyro is a lawless system and it's supposed to be dangerous. Being in a position where you could end up in a gunfight wherever you go, pretty dangerous to me. And if it ends up being the type of system that you don't see yourself going to, you don't have to. 4.0 really starts highlighting the power of choice that we can all now enact. Look at the cargo bug that's wrecking the servers. What about it? It'll get fixed. We'll do something about it. If we experience that bug in Stanton, we'll probably experience it in Pyro too. So it just end up being this position where it's like, well, we'll have to wait until COG fixes it. Whether or not players show up after the cargo bug gets fixed, a lot of people, and this video kind of highlights COG's marketing 4.0, and I brought this point up a few times before already. The marketing 4.0, you have to be a bit more specific about a cargo bug that was wrecking servers then. There's been a few. But he's been selling 4.0, right? And we've gotten a patch before 4.0. And COG's told us about all the stuff for this patch already. And then we've come into it and we've seen it all and we're like, all right, cool. There's not much to it. A little bit broken, but the really cool, sexy thing that we actually want, 4.0, it's down there. And do we really want to put up with all those bugs and problems and things like that? For the majority of players, it's going to be no. They're not going to want to deal with that. You know, why would I deal with these problems leading up until this particular patch if when I get that patch, it could be better, it could be worse? The duping bugs were the best thing for piracy. Why? Because the amount of targets that we're able to get was ridiculous. Just smashing target after target. We couldn't keep up. When they fixed the duping bug, it was like night and day. Not only because they fixed the bug, but the way that they announced how they dealt with people duping. Making an announcement to the entire community that 600 players got temporary bans for 3 months. I guarantee you that a lot of players who did dupe decided to not do any cargo hauling after that announcement was made. Guarantee you, and that made finding targets for us, I wouldn't say impossible or difficult, but it reduced our targets a lot more than what it probably should have gone down. When players think that they might get banned for something, they avoid it like the plague. They don't want to end up in that position. Unfortunately, that's what COG gave the impression, is that if you were doing this thing that we just banned 600 people for, and you were one of the other people doing it, we will get to you eventually. That's the impression people will get, and it's a problem. Problem for pirates anyway, because then people lose confidence in doing cargo hauling in case they get accused of duping, exploiting a bug, and then they also get a temporary ban. They don't want to go through that. COG really needed to make sure that if they do those sorts of things, that they allay the community's fears later on down the track and say there were more to it than just duping. Because I guarantee you there was more to it. There's no reason to ban 600 accounts like that or make the announcement like that unless they wanted to send a message to others who weren't doing it as much as these people as a warning. Hey, the duping thing, we know the other stuff that you were doing as well after duping all those credits. Stop doing it. But well, I think they've got another month. You should see them come back in a month's time, right? We'll be back soon. All right. Well, that was Insights in Alpha 4.0 conflict resolution. It's a marketing hype video for 4.0. Hopefully COG does better at managing expectations in follow-up videos, because my confidence in that is quite low after that video.